Facing a midlife crisis? Find courage in everyday women's stories. Subscribe to Resilient Women Rising.
The Broken Promise. How a 52-year-old mother reclaimed her bond with her son after a web of lies. Marjorie Langley's hands trembled as she read the text message from her son. "Thomas, don't call me until you figure out what you're hiding." At 52, she'd imagined her greatest challenge would be caring for aging parents, not watching the only son she'd raised bound away by cruel fiction. Just days ago, Thomas and his wife Celia had come to Sunday dinner bearing homemade pie and warm smiles. Now he refused to meet her eyes. It began with an offhand comment from Celia over coffee. "I heard your mother talk behind my back about our finances." "That's disrespectful." Marjorie's gentle denial fell on deaf ears. In the days that followed, Thomas grew distant missed calls, curt replies, then total silence. Each evening, Marjorie sat at her kitchen table, heart aching, replaying every word she'd spoken. Had she ever praised Celia's cooking too little? Questioned her career choices? Now, Celia's lie had woven itself between mother and son. Determined to uncover the truth, Marjorie slipped into Celia's apartment under the pretense of dropping off fresh bread. Inside, she noticed a folder of bank statements on the coffee table, entries Celia had edited to imply Marjorie had interfered with their joint account. The evidence of betrayal lay in plain sight. Clutching the folder, Marjorie fled back home, resolved, solidifying she would confront Thomas with proof of Celia's deceit, reclaim their bond, and finally break the chain of lies. That night, under the muted glow of her bedside lamp, Marjorie drafted a letter to Thomas, no anger, only the truth. She placed the edited statements inside and sealed the envelope with a mother's steady hope. Tomorrow at noon, she would stand at his door and risk everything on those words. The next morning, Marjorie rehearsed her words in front of the hallway mirror before hesitantly pressing Thomas's apartment buzzer. When he opened the door, his face was guarded, eyes dark with hurt. "Mom," he said, voice taut. Marjorie offered the envelope. "Please read this before you decide anything." Thomas took it but didn't open it. He started to speak, then stayed silent. Marjorie's chest tightened. She continued softly, "I know you've been angry, but I've never said those things about Celia. You deserve the truth." At last, his shoulders slumped. He led her inside and with trembling fingers tore the seal. As he read the bank statements, each forged entry, each false annotation, Marjorie watched tears trace his jawline. She offered gently, "Celia did this. I found the originals in her apartment." He looked up, eyes wide with confusion and dawning betrayal. "You went there?" he whispered. "Yes," Marjorie replied, sadness and relief mingling in her voice. "Because you mean everything to me." Thomas sank onto the couch, burying his face in his hands. Minutes passed before he exhaled, voice muffled, "I should have believed you. I'm sorry." When he looked up, Marjorie saw the familiar warmth return. She reached for his hand. "We'll fix this," she promised. Together. Later that afternoon, Marjorie joined Thomas at the living room table, where he'd spread out their shared bank statements with Celia's forgeries crossed out. Thomas ran his hand through his hair. "I feel so stupid," he admitted, voice raw. "How could I have doubted you?" Marjorie squeezed his hand gently. "You weren't stupid, you were hurt and confused. Love can blind us to the truth when someone we trust lies so convincingly." Resolute, Thomas nodded. "I'm going to confront her." He picked up his phone and dialed Celia's number. Marjorie watched as his face hardened, bracing himself. On the other end, Celia answered with her usual calm tone. When Thomas demanded to know why she tampered with the records, the line fell. Silent. Then Celia's voice cracked as she confessed to feeling insecure in their marriage and blaming Marjorie for imagined slights. Thomas's anger flared. "I trusted you," he shouted. Celia sobbed, promises tumbling out, but Thomas ended the call. He turned to his mother, eyes red-rimmed. "I'm done," he said simply. In the days that followed, divorce papers quietly filed themselves on the kitchen counter of his and Celia's home. Marjorie helped him through each step, finding a new apartment, sorting through joint belongings, and reclaiming his life free from deceit. As the final approved stamp echoed from the clerk's office, Thomas pulled Marjorie into a fierce hug. "Thank you," he whispered, "for saving me." Marjorie smiled through tears. "Always my son, my heart. Over the next few weeks, Marjorie and Thomas settled into a new rhythm. Every Saturday morning, they met at the neighborhood cafe they frequented when Thomas was a boy. Its faded teal awning and the scent of fresh croissants, just as comforting as memory. As they shared coffee and laughter, Thomas began opening up about his fears and aspirations. He confessed how Celia's whispers had preyed on his insecurities about success and family. Marjorie listened without judgment, offering gentle reminders of his worth and her unwavering love. One brisk morning, Thomas slid across the table a framed photograph their first family camping trip when he was 10, beaming beside a crackling campfire. "I'd forgotten how happy we used to be," he said, voice thick with emotion. Marjorie smiled, brushing a hand against the glass. "That joy is still here," she replied. "We just need to make new memories." They spent the afternoon planning a mother-son weekend retreat drive to the lake house, where Marjorie had once taught him to fish. As the sun dipped low, they toasted iced lattes and let the past's shadows fall away in the warm glow of renewed trust. Together, they were weaving a stronger thread, one built on honesty, forgiveness, and the shared promise that no lie could ever sever their bond again. The morning sunlight danced across the lake's glassy surface as Marjorie and Thomas unloaded the car at the old family cabin. Marjorie paused, closing her eyes to inhale the pine-scented air, so many summers of laughter and first catches spent here. Thomas carried their bags inside, his shoulders more relaxed than they'd been in months. Once the fire pit crackled with embers, Thomas hesitated before picking up a fishing rod. "I haven't done this since I was a kid," he admitted. "I keep thinking I'll mess it up." Marjorie sat beside him, looping her arm through his. "You won't," she said softly. "And even if you do, I'll be right here." He managed a small smile and cast his line. The afternoon slipped by in comfortable silence, Marjorie reading on the porch, Thomas whittling a piece of driftwood. When her rod twitched, she reeled in a bright blue perch and held it up with triumphant laughter. Thomas cheered, pride lighting his eyes. That evening, they sat by the fire with hot cocoa. Thomas turned to his mother, voice earnest. "I want to thank you for believing in me even when I didn't believe in myself." Marjorie brushed a kiss across his forehead. "Your truth matters more than any lie," she replied, as stars blinked overhead, their shadows intertwined in the firelight, no longer frayed by deceit, but woven together by shared memories, honest conversations, and the knowledge that a mother's love can outlast even the darkest of falsehoods. Back in town, Marjorie surprised Thomas with a stack of old photo albums she'd rescued from the attic. They spent an afternoon on the living room floor, laughter echoing as they flipped through yellowed snapshots. Thomas's first bike ride, birthday cakes lopsided with frosting, vacations defined by sandy toes and sunburned shoulders. When they stumbled upon a photo of Thomas and his late father, Marjorie's husband, tears glistened in both their eyes. Thomas closed the album gently. "I've missed this," he whispered. "I've missed us." Marjorie nodded, her heart full. "We'll keep making new memories, honest ones." That night, Thomas invited her to his apartment's empty corner that he'd been hesitant to furnish. He unveiled a modest bookshelf and placed on it the framed camping photo, a small potted fern, and a copy of his favorite childhood novel. "It's a start," he said. Marjorie smiled, proud. "A place for your roots." As she left, Thomas hugged her tightly. "Mom, thank you for every honest word, every rescued memory." Marjorie kissed his cheek. "Always, my boy, always." A month later, Marjorie knocked on Thomas's door bearing a casserole dish and a smile. "Family dinner," she announced. Thomas had invited a few close friends, his new neighbor, Jenna, and his co-worker, Marcus, creating a circle that extended beyond old hurts. In the warmly lit dining room, laughter and conversation flowed freely. Jenna praised Marjorie's shepherd's pie, while Marcus shared stories of their weekend hiking trip. Thomas sat proudly beside his mother, his posture relaxed and genuine. At one point, Jenna leaned toward Marjorie. "You and Thomas have such an amazing bond," she said softly. Marjorie's eyes glowed. "We're making it stronger every day." Later, as they cleared dishes together, Thomas paused and looked at her. "Mom, I've been thinking, would you consider moving into your own place nearby? I want you closer." His earnest proposal brought warmth to her chest. "I'd like that," she replied, stacking plates. "It feels like home whenever we're together." That night, Marjorie drove home under the soft glow of street lamps, she felt a contentment she hadn't known in months. The web of lies had unraveled, and in its place grew a tapestry of honest connections, not just between mother and son, but a community ready to support them both. The first boxes arrived at Marjorie's new apartment by the riverside. She unpacked slowly, each book, teacup, and framed photo a reminder of the life she and Thomas were rebuilding. Late that afternoon, she stood on the small balcony watching the river flow when her phone buzzed. "Dinner tonight? Thought you might want to see the new place." "Thomas." Marjorie smiled, smoothing the front of her blouse. She walked down to the building's lobby, where Thomas awaited with 2 steaming cups of chamomile tea. Inside, he led her to the living room, now warmed by a soft rug and a driftwood coffee table he'd crafted himself. He gestured to a corner by the window, where he'd placed a comfy armchair. "For your reading," he said. And here, he handed her a small potted hydrangea for the balcony, so it feels like home. Tears filled her eyes as she accepted his gifts. "It's perfect," she whispered. As dusk settled, they sipped tea and shared plans: weekend walks along the riverbank, Sunday breakfast at the cafe, and an autumn trip to visit Marjorie's childhood hometown. Each plan, each promise, stitched another patch into their renewed tapestry. That night, Marjorie fell asleep to the distant hum of the river, grateful that the current of their relationship now carried them forward, together, honest and stronger than ever. A week later, Thomas invited Marjorie to join him at his yoga class, his first foray into mindfulness since the divorce. She hesitated, but agreed, remembering how his father had once taught them both to breathe through uncertainty. Inside the sunlit studio, mats lined up like hopes renewed. Thomas guided her into a gentle stretch, his voice steady. Midway through the practice, Marjorie felt tension melt from her shoulders, or as much as 20 years of worry would allow. After the final savasana, Thomas leaned close. "Thank you for doing this," he whispered. "It's better than I expected." Outside, as they folded their mats, Thomas shared a surprising confession: he'd been offered a promotion, but it meant relocating across the country. Marjorie's heart fluttered with both pride and apprehension. "I know this opportunity means everything to you," she said, voice steady. "I'm proud no matter where you go. Our bond won't be defined by distance." Thomas squeezed her hand. "You've given me the strength to chase my dreams." That evening, Marjorie sat in her new armchair, gazing at the hydrangea on the balcony. Change was on the horizon again, but for the first time, she knew their relationship was rooted deeply enough to weather any move. 2 weeks later, Thomas stood in Marjorie's living room with a single suitcase at his feet. His new job in Seattle had started, and the weight of impending goodbyes hung heavy between them. Marjorie swallowed past the lump in her throat. "You'll do amazing," she said, pulling him into a tight hug. In the following days, they navigated the bittersweet logistics, moving day farewells at the cafe, packing unexpected tears into cardboard boxes, and a final Sunday brunch filled with laughter and memories. Marjorie pressed a small Charmin arc of the river into Thomas's hand. "So you always know your way home," she whispered. On the morning of his departure, Marjorie drove him to the airport in silence, her heart echoing the hum of the motor. At the gate, Thomas turned, eyes bright with resolve and affection. "Mom, this isn't goodbye," he promised. "We'll video chat every week, and I'll fly back as often as I can." As the plane lifted off, Marjorie stood on the observation deck until the aircraft's silver belly vanished into the sky. She exhaled, tears shining in the sunlight. Though distance stretched between them, their bond rebuilt through honesty and love was now unbreakable. That evening, Marjorie sat by her balcony, the city lights twinkling below, as she dialed Thomas on video. His smiling face filled her screen, the Seattle skyline glowing behind him. They chatted about his new apartment, the office culture, and the people he'd met, laughter bridging the miles between them. As the call ended, Marjorie noticed a notification on her phone and email from Jenna, Thomas's neighbor. It contained a photo of Thomas at sunset, tossing a pebble into the Puget Sound with a caption, "For Mom, no distance too great." Marjorie's heart swelled, and she replayed the gesture in her mind, proof that home wasn't a place, but the bond they shared. She placed the photo beside her favorite novel and whispered to the night air, "Nothing can come between us." With that reassurance, she closed her balcony door, content in the knowledge that love rooted in honesty could span any ocean. Marjorie drifted off to sleep that night, cradling her phone, the glow of Thomas's smiling face still warm in her mind. The next morning, her peaceful routine shattered when the phone rang with an unknown number. It was Thomas's manager, voice tight. "I'm sorry to call so early, but Thomas has been in a minor car accident on his way to work. He's stable but shaken. Could you come?" Without hesitation, Marjorie booked the earliest flight. 4 hours later, she landed in Seattle and hailed a taxi to the hospital. Thomas sat in a pale gown, one arm in a sling, eyes wide when he saw her burst into the room. "Mom!" he exclaimed, relief and embarrassment warring on his face. She knelt beside him, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "You had me worried," she said, voice soft. She settled into the plastic chair and spent the morning navigating insurance forms, calming Thomas's nerves, and arranging for his car repair. In the waiting area, she caught sight of the little hydrangea pot he'd pressed into her hands before he left, its leaves still vibrant. Later, as she helped him hobble into a borrowed cardigan, Thomas offered a rueful smile. "I guess I wasn't as ready for this cross-country life as I thought," he admitted. Marjorie slipped her arm through his and guided him outside into the crisp afternoon. "You're doing fine," she reassured him. "Life's unexpected curves don't mean failure. They mean we learn to lean on each other." That evening, Marjorie cooked a simple stew in his tiny kitchenette. They ate by the window, city lights flickering below, and Thomas reached across the table. "Thanks for coming," he said. Marjorie smiled, warmth blooming in her chest. "There's nowhere else I'd rather be." As she packed her overnight bag for tomorrow's return flight, Marjorie felt their bond strengthen not despite the distance, but because every challenge now carried the promise of shared resilience. Back home, Marjorie settled back into her riverside apartment, bringing with her the comforting stillness of Seattle's bay breeze. She unpacked a framed photo Thomas and her by the Puget Sound, the hydrangea beside them, and placed it on her mantle as a reminder of their bond. That afternoon, she received a call from Marcus, Thomas's co-worker who'd become a friend. "Hey, Mrs. Langley," Marcus said warmly. "Thomas mentioned you're teaching a workshop on financial literacy next week. We'd love for him to join." Marjorie smiled. "I'd be delighted," she replied. On the day of the workshop, she stood before a group of young adults at the community center, an audience eager to learn budgeting, saving, and honesty in money matters. Midway through, the door opened and Marcus peeked in, followed by Thomas, still in his sling but determined. The class burst into applause, and every face lit up at his arrival. Afterward, as they packed up, Thomas hugged her fiercely. "You're making a real difference," he said. Marjorie's eyes brimmed, "Only because I learned from the best of my son." Together, they walked home in the glow of the evening sun, two generations united by lessons of trust and the unbreakable promise of family. The late autumn breeze rattled the window panes of Marjorie's apartment as she set the last piece of pumpkin pie on the coffee table. She and Thomas had spent the afternoon decorating the balcony with twinkling lights and garlands. Tonight, they would share one more meal before his return to Seattle. Thomas poured 2 mugs of spiced cider and handed one to his mother. They wrapped themselves in cozy blankets, settling into the armchairs by the glowing lantern. Silence settled comfortably around them, no need to fill the air with words. At length, Thomas cleared his throat. "Mom, I've been thinking about everything we've been through, how quickly I let lies come between us." He looked down, swirling his cider. "I'm sorry for doubting you so deeply." Marjorie reached out, placing her hand over his. "We all make mistakes, sweetheart. What matters is that we chose honesty and forgiveness." He lifted his eyes, meeting hers. "I want you to know I'm building a life here in Seattle, but it doesn't mean leaving behind what we've rebuilt. I promise to come home whenever I can and to always keep our bond stronger than any distance." A tear slipped down Marjorie's cheek. "That's all I could ever ask," she whispered. They clinked their mugs in a quiet toast to truth, resilience, and the unwavering strength of a mother's love. Outside, the city lights blurred into a gentle glow, echoing the warmth blooming in their hearts. In that hushed moment, Marjorie knew their story had found its true beginning, grounded in trust, tender in forgiveness, and shining with hope for every chapter yet to come. By the first light of dawn, Thomas's suitcase lay neatly by the door, its final click of the latch echoing through the quiet apartment. Marjorie handed him a steaming thermos of coffee and wrapped him in a long, soft scarf. "Drive safely," she murmured, her voice thick with both love and wistfulness. Thomas hugged her fiercely. "I will, Mom, and I'll call you the moment I get home." He paused, tugging at her hand. "Thank you for every late-night chat, every shared laugh, and for standing by me." His eyes glistened as he brushed a kiss across her temple. Then he was gone, the city's hum swallowing his footsteps. After the cab whisked him away, Marjorie lingered in the empty living room. The soft glow of the hydrant photo and framed camping shot on the mantel, reminding her of how far they'd come. She poured herself a cup of tea and settled into her armchair, pen and journal at the ready. Her first entry in a week read, "Today I let go again of worry, of guilt, of distance. In its place I hold faith in our bond. No matter where life carries Thomas, our truth will light the way back to one another." She closed the journal, a gentle peace settling over her heart. Outside, the river's current whispered against the embankment a steady, unwavering song. Marjorie knew their story was far from over. But in that moment, she trusted in the promise of each new morning and the unbreakable thread connecting mother and son. 2 weeks later, autumn's golden light filtered through Marjorie's balcony, where she sat tending her hydrangea and penned invitations to her first post-reconciliation gathering, a small book club meeting featuring Thomas's favorite childhood story. As she sealed each envelope, her phone buzzed with a video call from Thomas. He appeared against the backdrop of his Seattle apartment, a proud smile lighting his face. "Mom, guess what?" he asked, holding up a bulletin board covered in community flyers. "I'm volunteering at a youth mentorship program teaching kids about budgeting and responsibility." Marjorie's chest swelled. "That's wonderful, dear," she replied. "You're paying forward everything we've learned. Your dad would be so proud." Thomas's expression softened. "I wouldn't have found this path without you." They planned his next visit for the book club evening, and he hung up with a promise to bring one of his mentees along. After the call, Marjorie placed the invitation cards on her coffee table and smiled at the row of familiar faces. They represented friends old and new, united by stories and honest conversation. When evening fell, she lit candles around her living room and set out tea and treats. The doorbell chimed. First came Jenna, then Marcus, and finally, shy knocks announced Thomas and his young mentee. As the circle settled, Marjorie opened the first book, her voice steady and warm. Around her, laughter returned, gentle, genuine, and unguarded. Each page turned marked another layer of healing, every shared insight forging deeper trust. In the soft lamplight, Marjorie realized that while lies had once frayed their family's tapestry, truth and love had rewoven it stronger than before. And as Thomas read aloud the opening lines, his voice clear and confident, she knew their bond tested by betrayal would endure any story yet to come. As winter's first snow dusted the riverbank, Marjorie bundled herself in a woolen coat and headed out for her weekly pottery. Class a hobby Thomas had encouraged to keep her spirits bright. The studio's warmth enveloped her as she wedged clay on the wheel, memories of family dinners and laughter spurring her hands. Midway through, the door chimed and Thomas slipped inside, cheeks flushed from the cold, his mentee trailing behind with a shy wave. "Hope it's all right I joined," he grinned, his eyes meeting Marjorie's with that familiar warmth. She beamed. "I saved a spot for you both." They spent the afternoon shaping bowls and mugs, playful competition sparking friendly banter as clay splattered across aprons. When Marjorie lifted her finished piece of delicate bowl, etched with a heart, Thomas's face lit. "It's perfect, Mom." Outside, sky grayed with snow, they paused. Thomas slipped an arm around her shoulders. "Your strength gave me this second chance," he said quietly. Marjorie rested her head against him. "And you remind me every day why it's worth fighting for the truth." They lingered in the studio's cozy glow, mother, son, and young friend bound not by obligation, but by trust reborn and ready to face whatever seasons lay ahead together. When spring's first crocuses broke through the thawing soil, Marjorie found her yard transformed into a patchwork of color that mirrored her renewed spirit. One Saturday morning, she spotted Thomas kneeling by her rose bushes, carefully pruning away dead branches. thought you'd be too busy with work, she said, stepping onto the dew-kissed lawn. He looked up and smiled, wiping soil from his gloves. I wouldn't miss our Saturday ritual. Besides, I've got news. Marjorie raised an eyebrow. Oh? Thomas held out a crisp envelope. I got engaged. Her breath caught as he slipped a ring box into her hand. Inside, a delicate band nestled against deep green velvet. I asked Emma to marry me, he said softly. She said yes. Marjorie's throat tightened with emotion. She recalled the rough journey with Emmethalise, the separation, the healing that followed, but saw the sincerity in her son's eyes now. Congratulations, she whispered, tears bright on her cheeks. She embraced him, feeling the weight of so many seasons melt away into this single moment of joy. They spent the afternoon planning an intimate garden engagement party, roses for Emma's bouquet, lemonade for the children, and a special toast to the resilience that brought them here. As the sun dipped low, mother and son stood side by side, their shadows long across the blooming lawn. Marjorie realized then that this was more than a new beginning for Thomas, and Emmy was a testament to truth's power to heal and to love's capacity to flourish again, no matter the scars of the past. That summer, Marjorie's garden became the perfect setting for Thomas and Emma's wedding roses in full bloom, fairy lights draped between the arbor, and laughter drifting on the warm breeze. As Marjorie watched her son exchange vows with the woman who had once caused so much hurt, but now stood before her in heartfelt sincerity, her heart swelled with pride and peace. After the ceremony, she led Emma aside. Thank you, she said, her voice warm, for loving my son and for your honesty that brought us all here. Emma's eyes glistened as she took Marjorie's hands. Thank you for forgiving me and for showing me what family truly means. That night, under a canopy of stars, Marjorie danced with Thomas to their favorite song that had seen them through sorrow and joy alike. With each step, she felt the ties that once were frayed now stronger than ever, woven by truth, forgiveness, and unwavering love. As the final notes faded and the guests cheered, Marjorie looked out at the happy faces surrounding her. She realized that their journey from betrayal and broken promises to reconciliation and renewal had forged a family unshakable in its bond. Raising her glass in a silent toast to the starlit sky, she whispered into the night. No lie could sever us, and no distance could divide us. We are and always will be one. After a web of lies,